Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Microsoft Data and AI South Florida user group. My name is Adriano, and welcome. And thank you very much for making the time to be here with us for another great session, where today we will be reviewing the Microsoft SQL Server on-premise, on how to migrate SQL Server on-premise. Today, our session today, we will see how to migrate SQL Server on-premise to Azure SQL Database, a cloud solution, by Thiago Alencar. And before we get started, please remember to obey by the code of conduct, proper, treat others well, just the way you want to be treated, along with other terms. Also, please take a minute to use the top chat, where you can use the chat window to enter your questions to the presenter while the presentation is happening. So we'll be live chatting here with the presenter. Just drop it in. How we're going to do is that during the transition periods, we are going to ask your questions to the presenter. As a starting point too, why don't you let us know where are you located at? So if you're watching us now live, feel free to ask questions and also enter your location. Now, without further ado, let's get started by bringing in here with us our speaker today. Hey, Thiago, how are you?
How are you? How are you? I'm fine. I'm fine. Get it? Not too bad, as they are saying. Not too bad. I'm good.
All right, good to hear. Can you tell us where are you located at?
I'm located in Dublin. Since I moved away from Brazil 2 years and a half ago, I would say I ran away, but when I moved away from Brazil 2 years and a half ago, I'm located at Dublin, Ireland.
Good thing. And folks out there, let us know where are you located at. Also, let us know if you can hear and see us well. So, Thiago, can you please tell us just a very short comment about your presentation? What is it about?
This presentation is about how to migrate from a SQL Server's on-premises, whatever version you are using, to an Azure SQL DB by using DMA to do the migration of the schema, database schema, and the replication to push the data up, to push the data out to Azure SQL DB. That's what the presentation about.
Awesome. Now, also on another note, can you tell us a little bit about you, your experience, how has been your career, and what do you enjoy doing nowadays?
Yeah, so I work as a SQL Server DBA for 10 years now, I think, with SQL Server. Uh, I started my career in Brazil, so 2 years and a half ago, my family and I decided to move out to Brazil, to Ireland, from Brazil to Ireland. And being of all these 10 years, I worked as 5 years as a Microsoft PFE, so a former Microsoft PFE for 5 years. I'm also used to deliver some presentation on events as the event of SQL Server Race. I think that I delivered 11 presentations, 11 or 12. And I also have some certifications, Azure Data Engineer and MCSA, MCSS for SQL Server from 2022 to 2016, 27. And that's my experience. That's all about me.
All right, so you are not only an international speaker, but also an international professional. How about that?
Yeah, I would say a little bit yes, but once you move, you also as you're Brazilian, you also international professional. But yes, just we moved it because my family and I would like to have an experience of living abroad in Brazil. That's why we decided to move. And I would say that's not very straightforward. That's not easy when you are immigration from a country to another, at least at the beginning, to get used to the how culture stuff. That's the big challenge of living abroad. Uh, but things uh, are getting the right place right now, so it's all fine.
All right, that's awesome, man. It's good to hear. It's good to hear. All right, let's take a quick look here uh, on the chat. So, folks, remember, like the video, subscribe, and remember to ring the bell so you are reminded when there is a new video or presentation coming down your way. So, pardon me. Uh, all right, welcome Kai, welcome Chandran, Kanth, and QTR Miyu. Kudos from Leeds, UK. All right, welcome.
Hey,
We also have uh, Vishu from Bangalore. Welcome. And all right, two attendees here from Bangalore. All right, folks. So we have some Europe, Asia, and the US here. We have Kai in Europe, around the world, man.
all of the
All
world,
here for
guys.
you, Thiago. All right, man.
That
I
that's what the
feel
good question about. So
so. Feel it's enough talking. Let's get it to it. Are you ready to start?
yeah, yeah. Can I share my screen?
Absolutely. Go
Uh,
ahead. It's
I'm gonna
all
share
you
my
now.
screen. Okay. Just let me know when you start seeing my screen, please. Uh, can is okay.
I'm going to
That's
connect my video here, but I'm here, Thiago.
okay. Yeah, I'm doing the same thing as well. Can you hear my screen already?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Definitely. So just let me just quickly again. Thanks for joining us for having me here, Adriano, and everybody all over the world. Thanks for having me again, and I appreciate this kind of sessions and speak about SQL Server. And I'm Thiago Alencar. Um, I am co-founder developer at SQL Monitor. That's a tool that a friend of mine and I created to monitor SQL Server environments. I'm working with SQL Server over 10 years now, me and 5 as a PFE at Microsoft. I also deliver some presentations to the SQL community. I really enjoy to share knowledge. I have some certification as well. I took some exams over the last year. Most of them all focus on Azure. And also I created two cars with a partnership with a Brazilian company that's a consulting company called Power Tuning. If you want to just check that out, you can just click on the links to point you to the right site, to the website. So these are my contact, professional contacts, my email. If you want to drop some message as well, if you get in touch, or add me on the LinkedIn, feel free. Right. So today we are going to talk about how to migrate the SQL Server on premises to Azure DB. Why did I pick up these? Why did I pick up the this subject? Because I know most of workloads moving to the cloud, and I see people want to know how they can migrate their workload with low downtime. So that's why I decided to bring these content here today. Uh, by the end of this presentation, you will be able to do the following. That the first of all, this is our goal for this presentation. Okay, what step must be taken, and what should I consider to migrate to Azure, and what do I need to care about? Like what step do I have to do to have a good result when I migrate to the Azure? Which tools? We all know there are lots of tools spread it out that can help you to migrate from an on-premises to an Azure SQL DB, from an on-premises to Azure VM, or whatever it is. So this presentation will focus on what is the right to migrate to this Azure SQL DB, right? So that's what I want to be clear by the end of this presentation. And we're also gonna do the real world migration with a low downtime by uh, by migrating the database schema using DMA and pushing the data out by using replication, transaction replication. There are other ways of migrating that, but I decided to use that to the long downtime and because it's easier as well. And we are not going to cover nothing greater than 200 level session. That's a level session up to 200. That's not deep in dive stuff. So just feel free and relax, right? Let's move on to the next slide. This is important to be clear what's not going to be covered in this presentation. As I said, no content greater than 300 level of this is going to be covered. Also, I don't want to spend time to discuss purchasing models, details, and comparison between them, which one is better, and compares by efficient cost, and so on, so on. We're not going to compare DTU or vCore between them. Also, I don't have time to compare all possible SQL servers when it comes to data. Okay, you are going to migrate to Azure SQL DB, but I know there are a lot of opportunities to migrate to Azure Synapse, Azure VMs, Azure SQLite. We are not comparing those workloads. And in addition, and moreover, we are not also cover post-migration tasks as high availability, backup with security feature to pick up when you have your environment migrated to the Azure SQL DB. I know there are few clicks to achieve that, and that's the reason I'm not going to cover this in our presentation, okay? So this is our agenda for today. Why Azure? Why now? I know lots of the workloads are moving towards to the cloud, and why Azure? This is like I can help every customer migrate to whatever cloud they want, but I prefer to use Azure. That's why I bring that's the kind of cloud that I've been working with for longer. Why now? This is part of our agenda. What steps are important to migrate and get a good result? And another stuff that's important when it comes to migrate is to choose the appropriate target. Okay, for this you must be able to identify how big your workload is. What you have in your workload. That's gonna work through. I'm gonna talk about today. And but last but not least, we're gonna talk about what tools suits to each case. And by the end of this presentation, we're gonna do a demo. I added here a Q&A by the end of this presentation, but I encourage you to drop your message whatever you want. So don't wait like to get the presentation by the end. Just if you want to drop your message before, feel free to do that, right? So why Azure right now? So Azure SQL DB, as we know, is a recommended target option for SQL Server workloads that require a full managed platform as a service. And we know the SQL Server handles most of the database management functions. Like we have lots of built-in functions into the Azure SQL DB as high availability, intelligent query processing, scalability, perform scalability. So it's one of the key benefits of migrating to the SQL database, and I would say it's that you can modernize your application. You are not longer responsible for maintaining your hardware to be like uh, expert on SQL Server licensing, Windows licensing, patch, security, and so on, right? And you can also eliminate any dependence on technical components that are scoped at the instance level, such as SQL agents jobs. Like if you are migrating, assuming you are migrating from an on-premise SQL database you are migrating from an on-premise SQL Server to Azure SQL DB, and you want to use SQL agent anymore. What another solution might be in place to replace this kind of instance level scope features? You could use Elastic Jobs, Azure Automation. Unfortunately, it's out of our scope of our conversation today, but there are lots flavors of features you can use or offered on an Azure to change like what you have today in your workload. So why migrate to the Azure? Why it's convenient to migrate to Azure CQTB? As I said, you don't have to manage any physical hardware. So you wouldn't need to understand like as physical patch, the latest security best practice works, and you need to manage all operating system level of stuff and patch, storage, and networking. When you migrate to the Azure, you could cut down all of these steps, right? This is one of the most important things when you migrate to the Azure. You could focus on like to meet what the business needs, right? So another reason for migrating to the Azure, I would say it's the cost. You can also save cost by using Azure Hybrid Benefit, which means you can bring up your license for the SQL Server on-premises to Azure. But it doesn't mean if you migrate to the Azure, you always have the cost less than the on-premise. Just to make sure when you choose the right tier that we work on, like if you are running your SQL Server on-premises, like a small database, if you migrate to the business critical tier on Azure SQL, or you are using a hyperscale, you can pay like you can pay more than you are paying right now. So pay attention on this cost. You can save costs, but it's not always true if you don't pick the right tier, right? Scale. One of the advantages of upside of using cloud solution is scalability. With Azure, you can adjust performance and size simply on the fly. So assuming you are running your workload on the Black Friday and you have a small database in a standard service tier, but you know your workload might get 10 times greater on your week on that Black Friday. So what are you supposed to do to meet the requirement of the business? Just scale up the SQL Server when the Black Friday goes on, when Black Friday ends up, just scale the tier down to a smaller one and pay what you are using. That's the magic when it comes to scaling workloads in the cloud. Automated backups and recovery. Sorry. Automate backups and recovery. So these kind of things mitigate risk of losing your data if there is any failure or interruption, right? And encryption capability. You might don't know that, but the Azure is totally secured. The Microsoft has thousands of certificate encryption capabilities with that at rest in the transit data, so it's totally safe, right? So once you know why migrate to the Azure, let's write in what are the migration steps to migration to the Azure? The first one is discover. At this stage, you perform an audit of your existing environment to understand the data and within the business. You also gain insights what the type of your workloads that your application database and how big your workloads are, the frequency the workloads run, and why they are used for. For example, think you have a workload that runs once in a day over time, like at midnight. These workloads cop over a file from a file share and insert into this database. You don't need like to migrate this kind of workload to Azure SQL Database or Azure SQL Mine. You just put like some data into an Azure storage account, maybe create an ADF and move this information into a SQL Server once in a day. So that's the important thing, the important stage when it comes to discover the environment to know what exactly workload you have to migrate to the Azure. As assessment, and at this stage, use the information captured in discover phase to perform a throughout assessment of the workloads that you identified and access any potential problems. This is where data migration assistant comes, right? That's gonna see that we will see by our demo uh, how to identify. Assume you have a code that changed that could exist like prior or post migration, as well the mitigation approach that will be used to deal with like a lot of stuff. So you also assess what Azure's features can be used as soon as possible to maximize the benefit of the data platform modernization. So if you have some code within your application that might break when you migrate to the Azure, this is where you identify this kind of code. In our example, we are going to use the DMA, Data Migration Assistance, but we also have another tools to do that as well. Planning. This third phase, let me type this. This third phase is outline the workloads and associated database and applications that will be migrated. It also specifies the order in which they are migrated and what the tools will be used. As I said previously, has many tools when it comes to migrate an workload to the Azure. We could migrate the workload by using DMA. We can use Azure Migrate, Azure Migrated Data, Azure DMS, which is a acronym for Data Migration Services. And we also could use another tools or transaction application, LGF, BCP, whatever, right? So the plan is important phase where you will decide what tools you can use for everything, for every step of your migration. So in transform and optimize phase that requires any change to be compatible with the new data platform. For example, assume you have a SQL environment that has lots of SQL agent jobs running, and you want to migrate that workload to the Azure, but you don't want to lose those their SQL job. What are you supposed to do? You could use another feature to replace this feature instead, right? And after when you migrate, that's the final step of migration. That's the final stage of migration, where you could validate, do a smoke test into your environment, remediate any issue that might arise. And it's also take time to get this opportunity to do a walkthrough to the Azure SQL feature that can be used like as a performance security if you want. Per default, as far as I remember, per default, the TDE is already enabled on your SQL Server, but there are a lot of other features, cool features that they aren't. Like SQL audit is not enabled with the per default. So you could use this opportunity to do a walkthrough on these features. Okay, so any questions so far, Adriana? Can we take it in a pause? Should we keep going forward? Okay, thanks. So choose right. That's the where you should decide what technology you're gonna use when it comes to migrate. So some considerations you should do. The key factors that when you are evaluating migration options are like the number of servers that I have on my SQL Server environment. I helped out customer for migrating their one SQL Express to Azure. That's very straightforward. Uh, that's very straightforward task, right? And but also had to help customers for migrating dozens of Azure SQL not Azure, but I helped customer for migrating dozens of like SQL servers on-premise into Azure SQL VM, customer migrating Azure SQL database into SQL MI. So one of the facts you must take in consideration is number of the servers and database you want to migrate. And important stuff, what are the database size? We know when it comes to Azure, we have some kind of limits of resource in Azure. So the SQL MI only support so far 4 TB of size when it comes to business critical tier. So if you have a database which bigger than that, you cannot put this database like into this tier unless the workload can run inside of the general purpose. You couldn't migrate to the national, like it might be a blocker. So just you need to understand it shows right. Okay. So the first on the top of our slide is the SQL on Azure, right? It's VMs impose higher compute and storage and management costs over the Azure SQL database offers, but grants greater control, which means it might be like offering a cost over that one, but you are still responsible for managing SQL paths, Windows paths. We're not only responsible for managing storage like as a backend. This is Microsoft response. When should I use these Azure SQL VMs? If your application surface area is instanced scope and requires features that are not available in Azure SQL DB, or there are no features that can be replaced, as in the case of the SQL Server agent job, okay, you must choose Azure SQL VMs. So to SQL MI, it's basically our SQL Server, our SQL Server instance running into the Azure. It is 90% compatible code with the SQL Server on-premise. So when should I use this kind of offer? When this is appropriated, like for application where is instance is scoped, it requires a features not available in Azure SQL DB. So when I think the only downside, the only drawback of using SQL MI, it's just a personal opinion. I think the cost might be higher if you configure that to use business critical. So if your workload switches into the general purpose SQL MI instance, that's good. I think the cost is really good compared to the business critical. Not the business critical is not a good one like when it comes to cost, but to have a workload that must run under the business critical tier might be a very critical workload. Okay, you must use SQL MI. That's getting back like when you have your application instance scope like MES, DTC, database email, polybase, file table, file stream, and things like that, right? And Azure SQL DB comes with 3 different flavors. So we have a single DB that's only your database running to the cloud as a platform as a service. It's greatly reduced over administration and management costs, like if compared to the traditional SQL Server on Azure, YAS, topology, on-premises, SQL whatever. Okay. So when should I use this single database offer? When this is suited for me. Of course, when your application surface area is database scoped. If you have a new application coming into prod, like as a new application, you must choose like the SQL database and do that this kind of application is born along with in the right format, okay? Because once you have this kind of stuff, might be difficult or complex migration, right? So we also have the Elastic pool. Basically, it's a pool of the database that a shared database pool. And we have the hyperscale out of scope as well, but the hyperscale has a limit. If I'm not wrong, 100 terabyte of size in the database. It's so big. So if you have a database which pass over 4 terabytes, that's limited to the Azure SQL Database Managed Instance, could try to get a hyperscale. And we have the Synapse. This is our form Azure SQL DB, right? Here on the bottom. So when should I use this kind of solution? When you have applications that run complex queries across petabytes of data, this is more related to the big data, not to OLTP, okay? But if you have an workload that you have to run complex query against its environment with different source, you might use, you also want to use like Python, machine learning, you try on like to look at the SQL Synapse in some points in the future. So, migration tools. What are the migration tools available for migrating data from on-premises to Azure? We have this is the top, like Azure Migrate. This is the service that helps you to discover and access your data scale on VM. It provides Azure SQL deployment, recommendation, target sizing, and monthly estimations, okay? The tool that you're going to cover in this presentation, DMA, that's our data migration assistance, that free desktop tool, okay? That provides assessments of SQL Server and single database migration to the Azure, both schema and data. In our example, we are going to only migrate the schema. Why? Because I want to show you today how to migrate the data with the low downtime. If you might choose data migration assistance to migrate your data as well while the migration is happening, you might have some downtime in your application, right? Depends on the size of the database, it could be an issue as well. So let's move to the next one here. It's the Azure Database Migration Service. Can migrate like SQL Server database to Azure SQL through the Azure portal or through the PowerShell if you have many databases to be migrated. It's required to use the VNAT. Remember that. So if you want to configure this kind of guy, you must configure a VNAT because part of the target environment must exist in the cloud. And our transactional replication, that's what I'm going to show you today, guys. And we also have another one. I'm not taking time to speak about them, but this is the one that I want to highlight. That's the SQL Data Sync. I had to help a customer of using these kind of guys over the last weeks. It's a good tool if you want to simulate the same behavior as you would have with the merge replication. So The customer might be SQL servers running on-premise part, another copy of the database running on Azure. And if you change the database, and the data is automatically replicated to each node. So that's really great too, if you want to consider the same as merge on Azure. Okay. So that's our database migration assistant. Where should I use my data migration assistant? Our DMA. This is to help us to upgrade to a modern data platform, not only to the Azure. Keep that in mind, okay? By detect compatibility issues that can impact database functionality in newer version of SQL Server or Azure SQL DB. So basically, what the DMA has and does, it has two main categories that when you are talking about assessment, right? So the category, if I'm not wrong, the name is SQL Server Feature Parity, which is the category that provides a comprehensive set of recommendation alternative approach and available in Azure. So it might compare what features can be used in our target servers and compatibility issues. These categories identify what might break during our migration. I'm going to show you these compatibility issues is able to fix some kind of rewrite of queries, refactor of queries. Like when you run the assessment, SQL Server DMA might identify, okay, this code is not as good to run in Azure. Might be a behavior change when it migrates to the SQL Azure. So we have this solution. It provides you a solution to that issue. It doesn't work for all issues, but some of them, the most well-known issues, that are some kind of automate fix. Okay. I also highlighted here what the source are and the target as well. So if you want to migrate your database from Amazon RDS, SQL Server, into the Azure, DMA can help you access and migrate your data. Okay. I spotted some best practices. I took out these from my official Microsoft documentation data migration system website. So what are the best practices when it comes to DMA? So don't install and run these kind of assistants directly on the host machine. So don't install this on the server, right? Always try to run and migrate your server during out of work business hour. Okay, you don't want to migrate in the middle of the day as SQL Server and keep your environment and take our environment offline. So always try to enable encryption connection when you migrate to the source and target servers. When migrate a database, provide a single shared locator possible access to the source and target service to avoid copy operation if possible. So this is some kind of migration best practice regarding to DMA. Now I want to show you how the replication to Azure SQL looks like, the architecture, right? So this slide display a basic configuration of how SQL Server replication works, along with Azure SQL DB. So keep in mind that the publisher here and the distributor cannot be an Azure SQL DB, right? So the only component that belongs to a replication architecture that can be a SQL DB are the subscribed, as you are seeing here on the top, right? So if you still want to migrate your environment, your replicated environment that runs on-premise, and you want to keep the same architecture from on-premise database into the Azure, you might use Azure VMs, or try on the Azure Data Sync as I previously mentioned. All right. So uh, the 1 million, like when I was studying and helping customers to migrate from on-premises by using replication, I was wondering why we cannot have another component like within the Azure SQL DB, because Azure SQL DB, when it comes to the replication, only support a push subscribe, which means the information is pushed out from publisher to the subscribe, and not not on the other way around. Which means the subscribe is not possible to go to the publisher or distributor to get the information. Basically, this is how the class replication might work on an on-premises environment. Just because we cannot have access to the operating system when SQL Server Azure runs, that's why we cannot have full subscription type. That's the question. So now I want to show you how to migrate a database and moving data by using replication. Let me bring here my Azure portal. Before you start migrating to the Azure, you might provisioning your Azure SQL environment. So I created this Azure PowerShell script to provision an Azure SQL database. Let me move these aside to here. Let me make sure that I'm connected to this Azure. Move it aside. Okay. Okay, I am connected to the Azure. Let me make sure that I have the Azure SQL DB provisioning already. Maybe not. This is the server. Okay, there is no database created. Let me this script that you are seeing on your screen right now. It helps you to provision your Azure SQL database into a given location. I'm not going to explain all what a script does because this is self-explanatory, right? And so, but basically what the script does is to provision a SQL Server, a database, put some rule in the file that's don't do that in prod. Like that's why I added this watch out note. And I'm opening my SQL Server to everybody in the world. Okay. I'm going to create a database called db-az-migrate database. I already have the resource group created, a file rule as well. Just let me add the migrate server, and now this is how I'm going to create. This is the same that I like to create a new Azure SQL DB. The new Azure SQL database, which resource group it will be in place, what my server name is, my database name. They are all populated by variable value. So in what the service object name is, in this case, this is for standard 0. Okay, I think it's 10 details available. Once this guy migrated, I run the schema data migration by using data migration assistance, and I will configure the replication by use the SQL commands. Let me open the file here. By the end of this presentation, I'm going to put all these scripts. I will catch up with Adriano to see where I can publish this script to make it available for everybody. So, okay, that's distribution. Let's see. Let's check out. Okay, the database is migrated. Blah blah. Let me do a refresh here. So, okay, our database is here. Let me go to the my migration assistance. We have two options of the project. If you want to just do an assessment And by the end of this, we could just upload our assessment report to the Azure Migrate. You see something like that. Let me show you. I uploaded my last report, and it displays like how many instances I assessed and what database belongs to that instance. This is the Azure Migrate report. The size of the database, what target I chose, and if there are any migration blockers, any break change, it's all zero, so the database is fine to migrate. The most important thing, do I have any blockers to migrate to Azure SQL DB or Azure VM? These two allows me to choose what environment I want to migrate to. So it allows me to see that I'm good to go one of them, this kind of environment. Okay? Let's get back to the data migration assistance. I will choose the migration project type here. Azure Migrate, my Azure MGR. Sure. So what my service type is, in this case, is a SQL Server. What my target service type is, it's Azure SQL DB, CKMI, or another Azure SQL Server as well, because you could migrate from SQL Server 2005 to SQL Server 2016 and so on, so on. You don't need you cannot just use these two to migrate from an on-premise to an Azure. Okay, so but let's pick this Azure SQL DB. What the scope is for my migration. In this case, I will only pick this up as a schema only. I don't want to provide like downtime of my application while I'm doing this migration. That's why I'm going to choose that one. Let's create the project, connect to the server, source server. That's my local instance here called DCDBA SQL Server 2017. Connect to that. As I previously said on my presentation, we'll pick up only one database per time. When you choose the migration, D2 offers to do the assessment before migrating the data. If you are not create an assessment before that migration, you could run this along with your migration as well. Next. Here I should type my Azure SQL instance on my Azure SQL Server running the cloud. And let me take my password that I created for that server. Let me connect. Just make sure that you have the database provision before you start the migration here. So as you see, as you saw, we provisioning the BAZ Migrate. So next. It doesn't take long to run. It depends the database size as well. That's why I got the AdventureWorks 2016 because it's smaller one. So once this database is prepared, I have here where's my source database, where's my target database, and what possible issues did it find. We don't have any blocker migrating here. If you had any blocker, it would appear as in red. So this is just a warning that this issue, it's a category behavior change. What means this kind of stuff might behavior in an undesired way when it migrates to the Azure, okay? The cool thing here, look, this object can be migrated, but you may need to fix the issue described below. It brings like what the issue is, what categories the issues belongs to, and what is the object. Like I create this object just to force this kind of issue, okay? Just to show you, just click and apply all changes and it will fix the code for you. That's really cool stuff, right? I don't want to migrate this DLL trig. I want to migrate this my plan guide. We also have another issue. Pay attention, as I said, not all issues has a suggested fix. That's what you map, or maybe fix that issue before do the assessment, but it won't break when you migrate to the Azure. But keep in mind, it might behave in a different way when it's migrated. It just let's ignore. And in the meantime, that I will leave it, it's going to generate it's going to script in all schema objects related to the migration. And let me go back here and let me go back to Management Studio. Just take a look. I don't have an empty database called DB AZ migrated here. Okay, nothing there so far. So all migration schema will be done by the DMA. Okay, DMA, where are you? Here. Okay. So just let me deploy the schema. Now the schema is being deployed to the Azure behind the scenes. We don't have any data. In the meantime, I will I will set up the replication. So you will see that the data being pushing out from the on-premise to the Azure. So the first step, I'm not going to get in detail what the components of the replication, how they work. I'm just going to show you how to migrate, how to set up a replication, and what the script I'm going to use it. But I'm not going to say, okay, this is this, that, and so on and so on. Okay? This guy like makes the server as a distributor, so that's the password that I'm going to use. It's the same as I'm using on my SQL. I never used that before. And don't worry to go to my Gmail or something like that to try to connect that by using this password. But this is the password that will be assigned to the distributor admin. That's a kind of a SA, a sysadmin when it comes to the replication inside of the distribution. Okay. I'm going to create the distribution system database here. So when I do that, behind the scenes SQL servers, change some configuration, create some internal tables to the distribution DB. Okay. So now I need to tell to the SQL Server instance that this server is going to be configured as a publisher to specify a given distribution database. If you are running the distribution database, if you are, can you see my screen? Oh, something. Right about now, sorry. Okay. Okay, thanks. Unfortunately, I just cut off. It's an accident. It was an accident. So when should I use that? Like if you are running to different, if you are running the distribution in a server and the publishing in another one, you should run this guy on separated server. As our demo use the same service as publisher as the distribution, that's why I'm running those codes on the same instance, right? So I'm configured the publisher here. Now what I want to do is tell to the SQL Server what the database is going to be as part of my replication by use sp underscore replication db option as proc. So now if you look at this here somewhere, sys.database database ID equal db underscore ID, blah, blah, blah. just didn't return the name and is published, if I'm not wrong, right? It's published, that one. Now it tells us that the SQL Server, it's a publishing database, okay? It's going to be used as a publisher. Now I put some note here. I don't know why, but when you are configure the log with agent, it's recommended that you should use the sysadmin account. Even if your local account has sysadmin right permission, it's recommended that you use to avoid any issue your SA account. So I put my unbreakable password here. So now what I'm going to do is, look, we don't have any SQL job. Basically, what the replication does behind the scene, create jobs to move data from a place to another. That's it, right? That's what the replication looks like. So like I'm going to create my log reader agent. I'm passing my Windows account called cloud within the TCDBA domain or TCDBA whatever. This is my password for this account. I put the same as I'm using for DSA SA. So if you look at this, it tells us the SQL Server started a SQL Server agent job here. You see, that's the job the log reader agent created on our replication. Now I'm going to I'm gonna add my publication, name it AdventureWorks, blah, blah, blah. I'm gonna tell the SQL Server knows that I want to use a pull replication or push, but remember that the Azure SQL DB doesn't allow pull subscribe. Why am I putting these in this way? Because if I want to have another subscribe rather than Azure SQL DB, I can use the same replication to push my data out. Okay. Now I'm going to create my snapshot as a component which applies the database schema and do the first synchronization of my data. So that's my snapshot agent. Okay. Now I'm adding this as a login and my TCDBA cloud login within the Great Publication Access list, the PAL list. This guy is required to do the replication. I'm using this guy as SA, but a good practice is recommended you to use a Windows login, which has DB owner permission on the database involved within the replication, not just as sysadmin accounts. Okay, I'm just doing this to make sure that everything will work by the end of this presentation. Let me check out okay, we have all command successfully applied to my Azure SQL DBs. If I go to my Azure SQL DB through my management studio, it's supposed to be here to appear all my objects. You see, all schema was replicated, right? For my database. There are other ways of doing that. But I chose that because, as I said, many times over and over again, I want to reduce my my downtime of my application, right? So while I'm migrating the database, the application keep working. I'm not doing anything that might affect the database performance. I migrate the SQL Server schema. I just need to make sure no other schema change happens during the day while I'm doing migration, but it's very straightforward task for doing on a daily basis. So the devs, the business could just keep using the application as is while I'm migrating the data. Okay. So now I'm going to create my article here. Let's reduce that. And this is the article. Basically, article, it's an object that's going to be replicated. It might be a start procedure, but in most of the case, we use it as a table, okay? So this is the schema of my table. That's the table name. And I'm telling the SQL, I'm not going to get in detail about this, but I'm telling the SQL Server to create this start procedure because behind the scenes, SQL Server insert, delete, and update data by using this as procs on distribution agent. Okay, so I'm going to add my article. Sorry for that. When I shared the script, I will try to rewrite this in English because I already used this to customers already. And that's why you are seeing some comment in Portuguese. So this is how my publication looks like at the moment. If it's being created, I just launch the replication manager here, and we see the publication was created. Okay, we have the snapshot rate agent that was never started. The log reading agent is running at the moment, but we still don't have any subscription. So uh, let me add my subscription. The important thing here is for this stuff, I must provide who is gonna be my subscriber, which means who is gonna be my server and database that will receive the data when the replication starts replicating. Okay, so it's gonna be my Azure blah blah blah, my Azure that I've created. Look, by the behind the scenes SQL Server also created a SQL Server job to push the data, and that's why the subscription type means here. And now I'm going to create an agent that is schedule agent job to synchronize the push subscription to a transaction database, okay? Transaction replication. As the comment says, all of, like, you can get all parameters from the official documentation. That's what I usually do. But what I'm doing here is create a schedule agent job for my subscribe, X, my database, blah, blah, blah. And here I must pass what credentials I'm going to use to this subscription gets into the Azure, right? This is my Azure credentials. I'm using the same for all of these, but that's my Azure credentials, all right? And the subscriber security mode is zeros, which means SQL login. If you want to use a Windows credential, you could change that for 1 and you specify your Windows login here, okay? Oops, 0. Let's create that again. It's creating. Look, right, the job started successfully as it should be. Now let me see if I already have any data being replicated to my article called sales and sales order header. Blah, blah, blah. Channel. The data is being already replicated. So this is my SQL servers on cloud, SQL Server on cloud. And this is my SQL servers on-prem. So if I go to the replication here and look at the snapshot agent, it did its magic. Like the bug hop for the first synchronization was done. Okay, and the data was copied over by using this subscription agent here. Look, one transaction with 46 commas were delivered. This starts in running. Probably some records is still being copied over to the Azure. We have some kind of latency because I'm using my public internet. I'm not using an express route. and I don't have the Azure SQL DB and the Azure SQL On-Premise run on the same network, and that's why we experience some latency. But when it comes to professional stuff, you could use Express Route to sync and have the same environment, the same database within the same environment. Okay, so that was the demo. I provided you how to deploy your SQL schema to the cloud and how to migrate the data. So if your business wants to migrate like anytime after now, you just need to stop pointing to your application to your on-premises database and start pointing your database, your application to your Azure SQL DB. You know, it's just change the connection strings to a new environment and it's done. All data going to be there. Okay. As a device, lessons learned from the field. uh, when you decide like a window, a downtime outage to migrate that, try to put the source database as read only to avoid another records being written to directly to there and you to sync the same data that you want. That would be an advice. Okay, uh, that's all from my side today. And if you have any question, feel to drop it to the Slack channel, YouTube channel. Feel free to ask anything. If you are shy, don't want to drop it on the YouTube, feel free to get in touch with me by LinkedIn or by email as well. Okay, Rihanna, are you still there? Yeah, yeah. Hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thanks for having me. Okay. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome, man. I'm here with you.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen already. Uh,
All right. I believe everybody can hear me now.
yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, pretty well.
Awesome. Um, so, folks, hope you all liked, learn from this great opportunity here where we had a live SQL Server on-premise to Azure SQL Database migration. You got instructed here by a great professional and educator here, Thiago, who showed even his tools of the trade, scripts, actual tools that he uses to do the same.
Yes,
So
exactly.
you see there, you're getting like a unique twist to a task that you may be called to perform. So whether now or in the future, remember this video, share, like. Now, if you are watching us right now, remember to use the live chat to enter your questions. However, if this time has passed for you and watching on demand, feel free to use the comment section below to enter your questions.
Don't forget to say, give a thumbs up and subscribe, hit button below.
All right. So, as just a second here, as Thiago just mentioned, remember, like, subscribe, and click the bell. Now, without further ado, let's check it out here what we have on the live chat window.
Okay.
All right, we have a nice one, very intuitive. I have always used, oh, that's a cool one. I have always used backpack. Now I know a new and better way to do it. All right, good to hear. You see, getting some
Uh,
good feedback here on it.
yeah, thanks for sharing your feedback. All.
So, folks, remember, you're watching right now. Enter your question there, your compliments there. We just had Chandra Chandrakan. It's good. Thank you. Also, he liked that. Thank you very much for being here with us watching the session. In the meantime, I'll give you all about a minute to enter any questions there. And if you're just watching, remember, subscribe so you can enter your question here on the live chat real quick.
I don't know who said that I used to use the backpack, but I used to use the backpack in the past. But I got tons of issue, and the backpack unfortunately does allow me to do a live migration of the SQL Server, from on-premises to Azure SQL DB. That's why I give up. Like unless the customer just want to a replica of the X database on Azure, and I will backpack. Otherwise, I'll try to do another approach.
Cool. There we go. Kind of feedback on a different on the using the backpack perspective as well. That's interesting there, Thiago.
Yeah.
You know, uh, and most important there. Oh, here we have Vishnu. Thanks, Thiago, for your session. It's great to learn the new tools for migration.
It's always you learn something new. Thanks for the feedback.
All right, folks. I don't see any new question here. So with that, anybody going once? Oh, uh, Samson says, well done, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for the feedback.
All right, folks, I don't see any questions here, anything. Remember, just check out the video. I know there was a lot of content. I know for you all, I could not catch all of this in one time. So just go back, replay. Remember to like, comment as well. Whether you like the session, what you like to see on the session as well. And we will follow up with you in the comment section below there. Don't forget that. We have a question here from QTMU. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. And I am a junior DBA and I need to develop my skill set on PowerShell to help with tasks like this. Indeed, right there. I'm quite sure, as you review the video, you catch the commands. I'll make also available the PowerShell scripts used by Thiago, so you can also practice. And you move from
All,
junior to senior. I'm sorry, what did you say, Thiago?
all database administrate must learn PowerShell, because it helps a lot to automatize stuff when it comes to the Azure. Indeed.
Absolutely, man. Actually, regard to PowerShell, I was just checking it out this week, as a matter of fact. Working, I needed to do something quick, and I went in a machine that doesn't have my tools. So I was using Cloud Shell, but using the portal. I'm sorry, not the portal. That's the deal here. Let me give you the right address. I think was shell. What's that? Shell.azure. So yeah, I was using shell.azure.com address. Have you all tried that?
No, never.
Yeah,
No,
so
never.
check it out.
I will check that out. I will check
Yeah.
that out.
Uh, Please, folks, remember before you engage in that, do a Google, read about it, because there's a charge related to that because there's a storage factor there. Let me do full disclosure here. There's I don't think it's gonna be a lot. You know, I'm trying something new that I think is useful. Many times for me it would be easier to write, I'm on a, how can I say, on a non-Windows environment at times, so it's easy to just open the web browser, click in a new tab, type in this address, and run some PowerShell, and it provides the ability to use CLI as well. All right. All right, so uh, we have QTMU saying, thank you, Thiago. I have been using DBA Tools PowerShell module.
Yeah, I got that. I use that as well.
All right, folks. So we come to an end here. Fantastic presentation from Thiago here. So just remember, got a question, use the comment section below, and we'll follow up with Thiago here regarding your question. And just stay with us, subscribe, and find out the next presentation. It's going to be pretty cool. We're also going to be talking about Azure SQL Database, and we'll be announcing pretty soon. Any last announcement here, Thiago?
No, not so far. That's fine. Thanks.
Awesome. So he gave you all the tips, tricks on it. Just check it out, folks. Remember, he shared with you his contact information as well. So do not hesitate. With that, folks, I bid you all goodbye. And thank you, Thiago. Really appreciate. Thank you all there for watching us, either now on the live stream or afterwards. Be well.
Okay, thanks.
And be
Bye-bye.
well. Take care, you all. Bye-bye. All right, man.